Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. How are we all doing?
I didn't want to say it, but I'm hot.
Yeah, yeah, it is really hot, and obviously, it's always a point
I'm
of
sorry
discussion.
to talk about it, but it's
Yeah,
impossible.
it's impossible not to, isn't it? It just always remind me of that, that in-betweener sketch when they get off the plane on holiday. It's hot in it. Yeah, might be too hot. Might be.
At least they left the country.
They did leave the country as well.
No, I'm actually not complaining. I thrive in the heat.
Yeah. I'm all right with it in the day. It's fine. I love it in the day. I love going outside, but it's just when it kind of gets to this kind of period of time, and then
Slept in weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Steve Coleman Williams has already noticed that his money is on Jake doing the tech tonight because they already got the starting soon screen. Well, actually, Steve Coleman Williams, I did it tonight, and I absolutely nailed it. So
Nail it.
yeah, it was a lot of stress. I think that's why I'm sweating so much. It's not
only been 5 years.
No, we only introduced this about Jake just threw this upon us very abruptly.
In all fairness, I don't know why I'm judging because I have nothing to do with the tech.
Yeah, well, I see you, Joe.
So, thank you, Andy.
Yeah, so
tonight joining us on the chat.
Yeah, loads of people.
I mean, more like pour and sippers wise, not guessing yet.
Yeah.
That reveal will be later. We have Peter Gilmore, good evening all. Malcolm Tucker, good evening everyone. Obviously, Steve Coleman Williams has made an appearance already. Jim Glancy, hot night for a whiskey, indeed.
It is.
Richard Wingrove's here. Jeff Sturr, all the regulars. Hi guys, Mike Pizarro.
Yes, everyone's really impressed with my holding screen tonight. So yeah, feeling very proud. I think I deserve a whiskey, but then actually just then when we were during the holding screen, I was trying to open one of these, but my hands are so sweaty. I can't actually open it, so I'm gonna have to use my top to open tonight's first round.
With your teeth, like the old-fashioned way.
No, I think I need to use that. We're all good. Yeah. Very sweaty hands. So okay, you can all let us know how hot you guys are. But anyway, let's get a move on. We don't need to be hearing us go on and on and on. So order of proceedings tonight. Jess?
Okay, so tonight the theme is the spirit of independence, which I love. So we've got some independently owned distilleries, some indie bottling. So we're kicking off. Andy's going to be chatting to Mark about Stowloch Ozark whiskey.
Yeah.
I think that's how you say it. We'll learn in a second.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to be chatting about the Master of Malt 37-year-old blended grain with Dave. And then Andy's back to talk all things Torabhaig and their new release with Stewart. And then we're only tasting 3 drams tonight. If you're new to pour and sip, you don't need to drink all 5 in one evening. And then we'll be chatting about the Leiper's Fork and Glenfarclas afterwards and just giving a quick whistle-stop tour of those.
Sounds good to me. Chris Leonard's just saying he had his first visit to a distillery last month at the Lakes in Keswick. Great.
Oh, I love the Lakes. That was my first ever distillery that I went to.
Oh, really? Well, there you go. It's the first one that Chris has ever been to as well. And he says, have they ever featured on here?
We have had at least 2 from the Lakes.
Yeah, we had I think the first pour and sip we ever did.
Did you have a Muscatel cask or something?
Had the Lakes Orange cask.
Oh, so nice.
And then we also have the Muscatel cask as well. I don't know if we've had any of the reserves or anything like that, but I think we've definitely had those.
Insult the spreadsheet, please.
Yeah, well, that will be done. I'm assuming Steve Coleman Williams is already typing into the spreadsheet to see which ones have featured. But anyway, so let's get things started. And let's head over to Missouri and speak to Mark. Yes. How's it going?
It's going lovely. I think you guys are about as warm as we are.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a similar kind of temperature where you guys are right now.
Yeah. So 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So 30. What is that? 33. I'm out of practice on the non-Fahrenheit temperature reading.
Yeah, my mum's always in the States, and she's always saying, it's 100 and whatever today. I'm like, that makes no sense to me. I'm like, no, that sounds mad.
It's warm. It's very warm.
Yeah. Okay. So you've not been on Pour and Sip before. We've not tried this whiskey before, so this is super, super exciting. Talk to us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the spirits industry and then found yourself in Missouri.
Well, like anything good, it starts over a drink with friends. That's really how I got into the industry. We came up with this crazy idea a few years back. I'm originally from the UK, born in Scotland, grew up in Hampshire, but been in America since 1989. And I've always been a very say, avid proponent of fine spirits, an avid consumer. And a few years back, I was sitting around and we were having a wee drink here in the Ozark Highlands. And one of the guys in the conversation was a distiller. And we came up with a crazy idea together to really lean into an area of the whiskey industry that had never been leaned into, and that was the Ozark Highlands, and establish a distillery where we focused in on everything that's been produced in this area since 1819, which is when it was called the Ozark Highlands by the US government. And why that's important is basically it's a massive limestone shelf that stretches from mid-Missouri to mid-Arkansas. And that gives us some of the best water in the world to make really good spirits with. And so we start with that. We also use heirloom seed ingredients. And then all the barrels, most of the American oak barrels in the world are actually grown in the Ozark Highlands. So we are at the center of the industry, but the story's never been told. So we came up with the idea to start the distillery, started aging some stuff. Our distiller had some older stuff as well. And we launched our first whiskey in 2022, which is the Stowloch flagship. And that's what's available in the UK. And then recently we've also launched a vodka and a single barrel reserve whiskey.
Okay, great. So you've spoken to us a little bit about the Highlands, but how important the Ozark Highlands and impact the actual whiskey flavor and the maturation process and all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's essential. So very similar climate to what you see in Tennessee and Kentucky. The water, like I said, limestone filtered water we pull from either the aquifers or the deep water wells in the region. We know the wells the water comes from, and that gives you the right balance of water, the right the right chemical composition to make really good spirits with. And then we combine it with some traditional practices. So everything we do is in the Ozark Highlands. We use hand-forged Missouri copper stills, continuous column stills, and really, the ingredients from the area. They're all heirloom seed ingredients. So everything comes together in a nice little package with all the barrels coming from here as well. Kentucky tries to talk a good game, but they use our barrels. So
okay,
good game.
So you're saying like it's like just like strong, robust history of distilling in the Ozark.
Oh, very much.
So, like, can it become as a Kentucky, a Tennessee?
Oh, very. It's just going to take effort. I mean, Kentucky for the last 50 to 100 years have marketed themselves very well, and they had about a 20-25 year head start on distilling in Missouri. So I think we could get there very, very easily. It's just going to take a lot of awareness, a lot of tasting with friends, which is hard to do, I'm sure. We can definitely get there. We just need to be able to tell the story that really hasn't been told for the last couple hundred years.
Yeah, it's really cool because again, like we've not really been that familiar with it, obviously in England. So it's great to have this stuff. And actually, the Missouri state government passed a legislation about quality and consumer protection. So there's some kind of similar as well. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, correct. So back in 2022, a group of us got together with the state government and said, "Hey, you've got this very, very cool thing that's going on already. Let's put some rules around it." So we went out, we looked at Scotch rules, we looked at bourbon rules, we looked at champagne, any of the regional alcohols around the world. We said, all right, what actually fits well with what we have in Missouri? And the lead was, of course, the water, limestone filtered water. So we're required to use chemical-free limestone filtered water. If it's an aged product, it has to be aged in Missouri-made barrels, which isn't hard, but it has to be aged a minimum of 4 years, which exceeds some of the other standards around the world. And then beyond that, it's really up to the individual distiller what they want to do. So they could do an Ozark Highlands rye or an Ozark Highlands bourbon or whatever, a heavy wheat. They can do whatever they want within those parameters. But we just wanted to ensure high quality, really good grains, really good water, and then of course everything happening in a region that has a phenomenal climate for barrel aging.
It's great because I think with the modern day consumer, they want to feel like the time, the place, and of where something comes from. They want something to come from that particular place, and they want to know where it's come from, that it has. So I think that's really super important. And when you're talking a little bit about, the decisions to use like rye, wheat, whatever, you're kind of producing like what's like a pre-prohibition style whiskey.
Yeah, pre-prohibition. So it's interesting. So the recipe itself that we use came from the UK in 1761 when our distiller's ancestors came over. He's actually a 9th generation distiller, so he's got a lot of continual knowledge that's been built up over the years. The yeast strain came over around the same time from Scandinavia. So we have a continuous yeast strain we're doing, which is also important to the finished product. So you've got that, that connection with history and with everything that we've been doing.
Yeah. And what does that mean in relation to the mash bill that you're using for this particular one?
Yeah, so the mash is 55% sweet corn, 40% honey wheat, and 5% malted barley. So it's very interesting. We'll be out doing tastings, and we'll be at a store, and somebody comes up and says, "Well, I only drink bourbon." And ours is technically a bourbon, so they like it. But we're like, "Oh, try this Ozark Highlands whiskey. You might like it." And they're like, "Oh, this is good." So they buy it. About 90% of people who taste it buy it. And then somebody comes up and like, "Well, I only drink Scotch." I'm like, "Well, why don't you try this?" And I think the malted barley coming through and a little bit of the honey wheat that has some Scotch elements to it. Or the guy who just drinks Irish whiskey, and they like ours as well. So it's kind of, if you drew a Venn diagram between the three, we kind of hit like its perfect center in that. And it gives a slight caramel flavor to it when it comes out at about 4 years old. We do extra long fermentation. So normal in the industry is 2 to 7 days. We do a minimum of 48 days fermentation, which cools it down and smooths it out. We also do non-chill filtration, which leaves all the fatty acids in it. So if you're really lucky, you'll find one that has some clouds floating around in it, which means good whiskey. And all that comes through in a very, very smooth, very approachable, slightly sweet American whiskey.
Okay, and this I can't wait to try it because I've not tried it yet. But this is essentially the flagship of what you're selling at the moment. The first one to make its way over here in the UK, and now available to buy on the Pour and Sip store, should you wish to, with your Pour and Sip members discount. Jess, while I try this, do you want to read a little bit about what what the Pour and Sippers are thinking about this one?
So everyone's clocking that we're kicking off with a 50% ABV. So Nick Tarrant has added a bit of water already. Obviously, everyone's welcome to add water. I would maybe suggest trying it on its own first, but finally really open this up. Peter Gilmore to the nose. I can smell the sweetness straight away with brown sugar. Steve Corn Williams again, brown sugar, black pepper, and a weird banana hint. I feel like that's good.
That's a little bit of the caramel. That depends how the caramel places for you.
Malcolm Tucker, licorice penny and some orange. Peter Gilmore, toffee to the palate and spices with a caramel finish. Jeffster, very sweet on the nose, a bit of licorice and aniseed in there. Claire M, very interesting, quite a heavy mouthfeel with lots of toffee and caramel. I've lost my place. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, Barry Morgan, always lean to Elijah Craig for my US whiskey, but this is a great alternative. Doesn't taste 50%, mellow and full of flavor.
That's that fermentation process coming through. Is it cools it down? Drinks more like a 92. But in the American market specifically, 100 and above is where people are at. Like our single barrel reserve is usually right around 120 proof.
Really?
That's not huge in the UK market yet. We'll do some niche releases for that, but 100 is pretty good, especially when it gets as smooth as ours does.
I'm not so keen on Fahrenheit as a metric, but I love proof. It just sounds so much better than ABV. 100 proof sounds so much better than 50% ABV. And shorter, exactly. Yeah, it just
in today's temperatures, I do recommend a big rock.
Oh, okay, cool. So would you tend to add this? I think someone had written that on the website. Something you recommend having a rock with this one.
So myself and the distiller, I was talking with our distiller a while ago, right when we first started working together, and he pretty much refuses to make anything less than 100 proof. And the only reason is because he wants to drink it, and he likes to drink his whiskey over a big rock. Anything less than 100 proof over a big rock kind of loses itself. And so that's why we do it. My favorite way is to drink is over a big rock. But like anything, when you introduce a new whiskey, you try it neat, splash of water, a little bit of ice, Big Rock, trying a high-end cocktail, kind of work your way through and see how you like this particular whiskey for your particular palate.
For me, it's great. It's just this honeyed sweetness that is just like right there from the start, and it kind of carries the whole way through. And the ryless mash bill is kind of really interesting. I'm interested, like, is that something you're planning for all your mash bills and future releases, this kind of ryless style of like super sweet, or is it something you're planning?
Yeah, so I mean, at this point we are we're leaning into stuff that's grown in Missouri and in the Ozark Highlands region. Rye is very hard to come by. We can get it, but it's much harder. It's easier to get it out of Canada. So I think once we're able to source some good rye in the region, then we will probably introduce some of that. But that's 4 years away at least.
Okay, cool. I mean, it's like, because it's so important, isn't it, that everything is absolutely from Missouri. So you don't want to be sourcing anything from anywhere else. And that makes total sense. Someone else wrote, is like, did you read this one, Jess? Is the palate is like eating a soaring malt loaf? Sorry, not meatloaf. I don't know if you get that in the States, but I absolutely get that. Meatloaf. You know what I'm talking about, Jess?
Yeah, it's like the stickiest, like, I don't even know what it is. Is it like dried fruit and bread, but like squished into like the densest loaf? It's like the ultimate festival food to me, because it's just like pure sweetness and energy. But like, I totally agree with that tasting note. That's really good.
Have you had it before, Mark? You used to live in
I have not.
Okay, there you go. Well, okay, they don't have malt loaf yet in the States. It's unbelievable. I should say.
No, and I mean, I'm over in the UK a couple times a year, and I haven't run across it. And
oh wow,
I feel like its packaging hasn't changed.
I missed out.
Yeah, literally, the packaging hasn't changed since it, like,
like something that looks like it's come from the 80s, and that's probably soaring malt loaf.
Totally. Richard Wingrove, I'm getting a lot of aniseed with sweetness. Steve Con Williams is getting the Werther's Originals note as well with the vanilla essence. You know what? You get those?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Okay.
We definitely get those.
You definitely get those. This is okay. Peterborough is corn sweet and a refreshing dram and poop with a little ice in these temperatures, as like you were saying. Steve's asking which part of Hampshire you're from.
I grew up. I spent a lot of time in Farnborough, and a wee bit of time in Aldershot.
Aldershot, okay, yeah. That's really cool. So you were saying as well, like, about the reaction to the whiskey in general. Is it kind of interesting when you're going to shows what people's thoughts are of this?
Right. I mean, it is interesting. You have conversations, especially in the US. Everybody's like, "Well, I just drink bourbon. I don't drink whiskey." And like, well, it's bourbon whiskey. Kind of. I encourage people to step beyond. A lot of people they're just bourbon. That's all they drink, and they are missing out on so many other experiences because every single category of whiskey has something different to offer. And I always encourage people, just try, if you're out having a drink, just step outside of your normal bourbon list or your normal Scotch list and try something else and see where it might expand your journey.
We always get that with this particular. I mean, we've been doing this for like 5 years, Jess?
5 this September, I believe.
And because we have 5 drams in a box and we've done so many different drams, usually there's somebody who's like, I don't usually drink bourbon, I don't like bourbon, or I don't like peaty whiskey, or I don't like this certain type of whiskey.
Right.
And by the end of it, of just having tried it because it's there in the box, they're always like, oh, actually, that was really, really nice. So it's kind of like, we've had people say they don't really drink bourbon at all and won't drink anything that's Scotch. Or I won't drink blended malts, which is always a weird one that we hear as well. But like, it's just that preconception. And once people try it, they're well open to it, and they're saying, oh, actually, that's really good.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Monkey Shoulder is a phenomenal, blended single malt, or blend of 3 single malts. It's quite nice. Just try something new.
Yeah, exactly.
Expand your world.
Yeah. As well, where did the name come from?
So Stowloch is combination 2 words. And it was a little bit about me, because born in Scotland, growing up in England, they're like, all right, let's do something that plays with that a little. So Stow is 7th century Old English for holy place, and Loch, as we know, is Gaelic for lake. So literally the name means holy water.
Okay.
It's true.
Which is absolutely true. Yeah. I suppose Americans aren't used to having something like Loch at the end of their name.
Yeah, and it was funny because we had to be really careful when we came over to the UK. We're like, all right, big American flag, Ozark American, because always want to avoid that accidental confusion.
Yeah.
Like if I just did Stowloch by itself, people would probably assume maybe Scottish. And no, it's fully American, 100%, nothing to do with Scotland. So we were very cautious about making sure there was no confusion on that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Well, I mean, it's absolutely great stuff. What's in the pipeline coming up in the future after this release? Or is it just kind of getting this release out there?
Yeah, at this point, getting out there, we're going to be introducing some, hopefully our vodka in the near future in the UK. And then we'll be going to do some new whiskeys down the road. We've been doing one of our single barrel reserves has been a 90% honey wheat, 10% malted barley. So that's at least 10 years old. I'd like to do a younger version of that and call it our Stowloch wheated. So it definitely wouldn't be a bourbon, still a whiskey.
Yeah.
But yeah, something that one with the more honey wheat, you get actually the honey starts to present kind of like an aged Scotch versus the caramel you see in the current flagship.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So this is like a difference between honey wheat and just the wheat in general for the people.
Yeah, honey wheat's an heirloom varietal. So the longer it stays in the barrel, the more honey-like it becomes in its flavor.
Okay. Do you want to actually just quickly, for anyone who might have missed that when talking about the heirloom ingredients, what that means?
Yeah. So heirloom seeds, so non-GMO. It's handed down. There's no gene editing. It's just the seeds that have been handed down generation upon generation upon generation. So you just know the quality of the seed. You know where it's come from. You know the fields it's been grown on. It just gives you that assurance that it is fully natural and there's nothing been done to it.
Okay, cool. That's interesting to know for everybody. And Mike Pizarro said it's a really smooth, easy drinker, not that complex, and Steve Coleman Williams is saying he's from Basingstoke, so maybe close to where you were.
Basingstoke?
Yeah. Services family with a question mark. He's really trying to get to know you here, Steve Coleman Williams. Jeff said this is the great thing about Pour and Sip is the chance to check flavors from all around the globe. And Malcolm Tucker saying the Stowloch's dangerous, far too easy to drink.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. But always remember, people, pour and sip. That's why we called it that.
Sip, don't gulp.
Don't gulp. And Steve's still waiting to see Flocky in a box. So that's a different thing entirely. We're not that. Okay. But anyway, well, thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. Pleasure talking to you and drinking this. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I love the story. It's really great hearing something that's come from a region we're not used to over here in the States. So really cool, and look forward to what you're doing in the future. If you can stick around to the end, please do. Otherwise,
absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. Cheers. Right, let's take Mark off. That was a great way to start the evening. I have to really enjoyed that. Did you like that?
Yeah, I really like that. I feel like bourbon was like Four Roses even as well was like the first whiskey that I like really enjoyed and not just like drank it, you know.
So
I feel like I always have a soft spot for like that style of it, like a sweeter style of whiskey.
Yeah, that I really liked that. It's right on. I think that's a great opener, that one. Right, we're moving on now.
Yes, having two firsts today. Our first whiskey from the Ozarks and the oldest whiskey we've ever had on Pour and Sip. Right now.
You know the program Ozark?
Yeah.
Is that set in Ozark? It's just occurred to me. It is. Okay, cool. That's why it's called Ozark. Okay, it's set in Ozark. Okay. I've never seen it. I don't know. I just remember.
It's good. You might have missed the boat a bit on that, but it was really good.
What do you mean I've missed the boat?
Well, like it ended a while ago.
Oh yeah, but The Sopranos ended 8 years ago, and I then watched that like a couple of years ago.
Okay, well, yeah, get on it.
Get on it. Jess is very cutthroat with her programs. When they finish, you have to watch it there and then.
You know, sometimes though, I can't get into this conversation now. It's boring for everyone else. We'll have later.
We'll get loads of comments now, though. That's the thing. These little conversations always get.
I'm glad you aired that question publicly. Is Ozark set in the Ozarks?
There could have been another name for something else. Anyway. After that, I'm hot. Look, the actual sweat is here.
Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable. I need ice doesn't fit in these glasses, but we need.
Anyway, we're going delirious here. Let's invite Dave onto the screen.
Hey, Dave. Oh, you've got a Calippo.
You've got a Calippo. Oh, that is the absolute game. I mean,
someone's got.
That's probably the best entry we've had from a guest.
Just let me finish.
Yeah, the last bit, the best bit is where the juice is. That's the best. You get the juice.
Oh yeah, that's where it is, nice and cold and chilled. Absolutely. I put some whiskey in that afterwards.
Yeah.
I think
peak ice lolly, that one.
Well, I don't want to interrupt your Calippo, Dave, but it's so nice to have you. This isn't your first time on Pour and Sip?
First time this year, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Every time they need someone to come and talk about whiskey, they give me a call and say, "Can you talk about whiskey, Dave?" Try stopping me.
Amazing. Love to hear it. Well, for anyone who hasn't encountered you before, who are you and what do you do at Whiskey World?
Who are you?
Who are you and what you do?
I'm Dave Worthington. I'm a whiskey geek, a whiskey nerd. Love whiskey, talk about whiskey, write about whiskey, drink whiskey, collect whiskey, not collect whiskey. I just buy too many bottles. It's not really collecting because nearly everything's open. I'm brand ambassador for That Boutique Whiskey Company, is where I really started in the industry on full time. But I generally do Master of Malt and everything Master of Malt whiskies these days. So whiskey, talk about whiskey. That's what I do.
So we have a 37-year-old blended grain bottled by Master of Malt, which, if anyone didn't clock, also powers Pour and Sip. So lots of connections here. But many people might know Master of Malt as a retailer, but obviously it has a pretty lengthy history as an independent bottler as well. So could you just tell us a bit about that for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, 40 years. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, which is sort of mind-blowing. 40 years. But yes, it did start off really small as a dramming shop, effectively. Breaking bottles down into drams. That's where it all started. Drinks by the dram, really, effectively. 40 years ago, we bottled whiskey from all over the show, several different brands like Boutique Whiskey coming into it, the gin and the rum alongside it. And we've just gone through a big rebrand for the Master of Malt bottlings, and this is one of the flagship bottlings. There's 2 old grains in there, I believe. The 37-year-old, which we've got here from 1987, 25
year.
Oh,
87.
Yes, just admitted my age to everyone in Pour and Sip there. I don't know.
80s are all a bit of a haze to me. So I'm still trying to piece them together.
I wasn't there.
No,
of course you were. So, they've just done a revamp and they look absolutely splendid, the new bottlings. I mean, I've got some of the earlier bottlings from a long, long time ago, quite back from 2012 when they were an independent bottler back then. But yeah, they've really pushed the boat out. The design looks fantastic with the bronze for the blue labels. I think they look absolutely beautiful, and they've got the sort of masterpiece selection, which is some very, very old malts and everything. This one is in sort of the premium end, the white label. So yeah, if you wanted, I mean, this is a 37-year-old blended grain. Unfortunately, I don't know the constituent parts, or we don't know the constituent parts. Now, if we go back to 1987, there were, I believe, 9 operational grain distilleries at that time. There are 7 today, and 2 of those weren't here. So Loch Lomond, I think that started in 93, 94, and Stowloch or Glenfarclas started in 2010. So we can discount them.
5.
There are 5 of modern distilleries that are still operating today: Girvan, Strathclyde, Invergordon, Cameron Bridge, and North British. They're the sort of the key big 5. There's also 4 possibilities of a closed distillery in there. So we don't know. There could be.
How many at all? Like, do you even know how many parts there are?
No. This is a cask that was offered to us. Had a taste from the sample and thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That was something I was going to ask about, where, like, the independent bottling process, especially with a whiskey this old. Like, at what stage did you, like, as Master of Malt, start getting involved? Like, how old was the whiskey when you, like, met it?
Oh, these would have been fairly new purchases. We do have stuff laying down, and Master of Malt does buy younger spirit and mature it on, or re-rack it and mature it on. But things like this, sometimes we do blends. We have made blends under boutique and Master of Malt over the years. But generally, we're buying parcels of whiskey that are more or less ready to bottle.
Yeah. I was also wondering, you might not be able to tell us this, but obviously this is a blended grain, so it's grain whiskey from multiple distilleries. Who is storing, because obviously usually a distillery would store its own whiskey, so who's been taking care of this whiskey since 1987?
Well, when you've got a blended grain, I mean, Scotch whisky is unique and it's built on the back of blenders. Nearly every distillery built before 1995, when Aaron came on board, was built for a specific style of whiskey for the blending houses. There's only since then that these distilleries have gone on as single malts. And if you wanted a 35-year-old blended Scotch whisky, you'll be looking at grain circa this age to put the grain whisky as the backbone of that whisky. So it's probably come from one of the big blending groups that was looking to age it on to 40. I don't know. I mean, this is pretty good at 37 years old. It's still 54.7% ABV, so it's held on to its and this was put into a cask in 1987, so there could be older constituent parts in here.
Yes, that's the youngest it could be, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there were four, like I say, there were four closed distilleries that closed before or closed after 87. So Cambus could be in there. It's quite a common distillery. It's a nice distillery, Cambus. Edinburgh's Caledonian distillery that closed in 1987. So that was the backbone of a lot of big blended Scotch whiskies, Cali and Cambus. Dumbarton, so Pernod Ricard's grain distillery, the Ballantines, those sort of things. So that's over in Glasgow. And Port Dundas, the other big Glaswegian distillery that closed in 2010. So they could be in there as well, but there were other possibilities.
I like the mystery. So I feel like blended grain whiskey and then sort of more so blended grain, I feel like it's like pretty underrated. I feel like it gets pretty slept on, which is ironic, obviously, given that it was like the driving force of the Scotch whisky industry for like a long time. But why do you think that is?
Really, because I think we can go right back in history to the 1906 What is Whiskey? Grain whiskey was having a bad rap around that time, very bad. There's a very famous law case about what is whiskey and whether the Highland distillers didn't want grain whiskey being called whiskey, Scotch whiskey. It was inferior. There was all these stories of them putting anything through the column, distilling anything for grain whiskey. It could be, rotten grain. I was just reading something last night, I think, about this and thinking, is this really odd? They'd say this. And there's a wonderful book that was written by the Irish distillers, the Jameson's books, like a pre-1880s or something like that, really angry about the column still whiskey, the silent still whiskey, as they call it. So there's been that right back in the history. And so grain whiskey was never looked at. It was always the backbone of a blended Scotch whiskey. However, there are people in the industry that have been sort of championing it for a long, long time. And you really thank Compass Box, really. John Glaser, who's one of the first people to really push grain whiskey back out there when Compass Box launched a new business with a blended grain with their hedonism. That really pushed it back out there, because I think John Glaser was working with Johnny Walker, Diageo, at the time, and he was obviously going around all these warehouses and finding these amazing casks of old grain whiskey. And grain whiskey has, up until the 80s, when most of them started switching to wheat, it was all maize. Most of them were maize. I think Girvan started to switch to wheat in 87 and a few others followed. But even today, North British and Invergordon still use a lot of maize. Invergordon has a sort of a unique profile with maize and wheat together, which is kind of cool, where North British is maize and just about everything else is wheat. So there's a mixture of that in here. That oiliness should come through from maize. which you can normally pick out, that oiliness. And I'm just trying to have a look at it.
So maize is essentially corn, right? The same.
Yeah, corn. Yeah, what we call corn over here. We call maize corn, and we also call wheat corn.
That's
over
fun.
Here. We have cornfields, don't we, which are fields of wheat in the UK. So
not confusing for anyone at all.
Corn is maize, effectively.
Okay, yeah. Andy, do you want to read out some of these notes? I feel like everyone's getting stuck in, and I need to have a sip.
They are. Ali C is just starting Boutique Dave, always a favourite. Even before trying the whiskey, Dave is a favourite. Mike Pizarro, whoa, the blend is very distinctive on the nose, like a swimming pool or a pond. Okay. Steve Coleman Williams, 1987, a good year. Okay. Any reason for that? Were you born then? Alex Battersby, the best people were born that year. Okay, everyone's talking about the year. Literally, the best people were born that year. I'm still trying to find my Glenfarclas 1987 cask. I can't find it.
Oh,
anyway,
God.
It's quite expensive. You got anywhere where I can get one, it would be good to know. Anyway, completely off topic. Steve Conwell, saltiness on the nose, almost taffy-like, and pine forest on the nose. Oh, and can smell the extra 5%. Jim Glancy, there is a herb on the nose that I cannot place. It smells so fresh to me. Ali C is guessing there's a fair amount of Cameron Bridge in this from the smell. Have I frozen or has Dave frozen? Have I frozen?
Oh, no, sorry, Dave's frozen.
Dave's frozen, okay. Cool.
Mid-pour.
He's frozen mid-pour, is that what it is?
Oh,
he was just finishing off his Calippo. So guessing there's a fair amount of Cameron Bridge in from the smell. And Maldes, most importantly, 1987 was the last time Everton won the league. Well, there you go. A long time ago for you toffees. Peter Gilmore, fudge golden syrup and oak to the nose. Ali C, hints of North British. Everyone's really guessing on this, where it could possibly be from. Jim Glancy is the menthol cigarettes an elderly auntie smoked. I think they were called St. Moritz. Okay, well, there you go. That is a really uniquely niche.
Wouldn't that be St. Moritz?
St. Moritz.
I don't know. Is that not French?
Well, I don't know. It's it's the menthol cigarettes an elderly aunt smoked. I think they were called St. Moritz.
All right. My bad.
Yeah, I don't know. It was obviously a type of cigarette. Peter Ray definitely agreed with the salty, piney description on the nose. Malcolm Tucker knows orchard fruit, Scottish tablet, wood, and a floral note. I'm having trouble placing. More gone. Dave?
Yeah, definitely that salted caramel coming through. Sometimes you pick up, and some of these old grains, you pick up some of that toasted coconut notes. And I'm just trying to see if I can squeeze this out here, but I can't at the moment. You know, those mushrooms.
Yeah. Barry Morgan, Pet Shop Boys, It's a Sin was released in 1987. I'm sure there were lots of songs released in 1987, Barry, but was this your favourite song? Is that why it's a particular note for you? Mike Pizarro, butter, toffee, licorice, vanilla. This is really lush and complex. Lovely, oily mouthfeel too. Barry Morgan, this isn't a sin, but it's not for me. Okay, there you go. Okay, that's where he was leading with the Pet Shop Boys. Peter Ray, given the nose, I'm surprised how buttery it tastes. Reminds me of fudge. Peter Gilmore was 14 in 1987, so long ago now. I'm 52. Lol. Jim Glancing goes on forever. I'm talking about the finish. Lovely stuff. There's loads coming through about this. Ali C, like an oaked sauterne, very smooth, sweet strawberry Campinos. I remember Campinos.
What's a Campino?
Oh, do you not remember? They were like a small little strawberry and vanilla kind of
white and red striped sweet.
Yeah,
sweet.
They were great. Do they still sell them? I used to get them at school.
No idea.
Ah, well, I should look. They were great. Mike Pizarro loves a grain, seriously underrated. Steve Cole Williams, the sweetness is pleasantly surprising. The tartness of the percentage reminds me of a stewed rhubarb. Just looking more stuff. Jeff's saying he was 30 in 1987, just starting on his whiskey journey. Still trying to find one I like. Very good, Jeffster. Mike Pizarro, yes, ginger. That's what I was missing in my notes. And Peter Young is feeling old because he got married in 1987. Anyway, so yeah, loads and loads of notes coming through.
I feel like there's a lot of
Barry Morgan's actually said every time they say maize, take a sip. So it could be
you've given them another reason. There's been nothing left soon.
Guns N' Roses, didn't they come online in '87 as well?
Well,
Guns N' Roses, yeah. Guns N'
Roses. It was a great year. particularly because I was born. But also there was some good music released in that year.
It wasn't a good year in weather-wise because that was the Great Storm that went right through the UK and destroyed everything, wasn't it?
Okay. You could argue that my birth was like that. Just my whole life was like that. The moment I got put into this world with a great storm that ruined everything. Real Boingers definitely smells the corn flavour on the nose with the butter and syrupy toffee on the nose. I actually think like it's like quite, for grain, it's like quite mellow in that respect. Is that the age of it as well that's kind of mellowed out those, like you were talking, Dave, like the coconutty, like fudgy kind of notes?
Well, that coconut sort of note comes from the cask. It's from the oak that draws it out there. I've had some wonderful old grains that bring that toasted coconut. Always blows me away every time if you smell something. It's like when you smell Scottish gorse and it has that coconut homey sort of nose that you don't find down here. Gorse smells completely different on the Highlands and Speyside than it does around the scrubland of deepest mid-Bedfordshire.
Yeah, I've had this before where I keep trying to tell my friends, I'm like, oh, if you squeeze a gorse flower, it smells of coconut. And then obviously it just smells like earth. And they were like, Jess, you've got confused. And I'm like, I swear I haven't.
You haven't. It's just different up there. Yeah, absolutely different.
I was going to say as well, grain is obviously like a slightly sort of lighter, like it's generally sweeter, more fudgy, like more of those vanilla notes than say like a malt. Do you think, obviously we don't know what kind of cask this was matured in, but are there generally like casks that people would steer away from when maturing grain, like sherry, if they're too strong of a flavour?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, or try everything. There have been some people who have put grain into big sherry casks, and I remember having some very young Invergordon from one of the other independent bottlers that put it into a new Oloroso hogshead, and it was really funky. It was really cool. I do like some of that stuff. It was, really overpowering. It was a dark whiskey. But no, really just putting in a refill hoggy, I think grain distilleries are starting to, there's a market for grain whiskey. There never has been. It's always just gone into anything. It's been the backbone of the Scotch whiskey industry. But, a couple of distilleries have started releasing. They did a while back. They used to be able to buy a really lovely buttery whiskey called Cameron Brig, long before Haig Club. It was called Cameron Brig, Space Brig. And that was a really cheap as chips bottle of corn, like a mellow corn, I think is a sort of equivalent in America. But
I love mellow corn. I think we spoke about this a while ago.
And there was Invergordon released a 10-year-old a long, long time ago as well. And I think Invergordon are looking at reintroducing, I saw something online a little while ago when I was looking into Invergordon, and they're trying to bring some sort of 15-year-old grain releases out. Girvan, of course, have been doing single grains for a little while in their bottlings as well. So yes, a few of them have been releasing single grains, but generally they can't keep up. The distilleries are huge. Some of these distilleries are absolutely enormous, and you can see just by looking at the Scotch whisky figures how much whiskey is being exported and how much is still blended Scotch whisky. And so the grain distilleries, I've been talking to a couple of grain distilleries because we haven't bottled one of those distilleries, and I'd love a cask or two, but they just can't keep up at the moment.
Wow, that's amazing. So actually, single grain is like a rarity, even though I feel like it's not like it's probably high in demand from like a select group of people, but you still can't keep up with
some distilleries can't keep up for their brands. It's for blended Scotch brands that are taking off or being pushed out there again.
So when you see grain like this, it's really special actually.
Old grain like this is really special. Yeah.
Did we have an old, was it Cameron Bridge last time, or we had like a really old one like a while ago?
We did a boutique 39-year-old a little while ago. I'm not sure if that was the one we did on Pour and Sip.
Someone could probably let me know on here. We had.
Well, this is the oldest whiskey we've had.
This is definitely the oldest whiskey we've had.
That's trusting the tasting card.
We had a really, really old, I'm talking long time ago, Cameron Bridge whiskey, many years ago. I can't remember now for the life of me how old it was. Steve Conwell-Williams will be answering me very soon.
The granddaddy of the distilleries, really, isn't it? The
exactly.
Cameron Bridge, absolutely.
Okay, we've had a Cameron Bridge 29-year-old.
Still pretty good, pretty old.
There you go. It was old, but not this old.
So that would have been a boutique.
It we did a 37-year-old. We did 324s and 27. I don't think it would have been a boutique.
Sorry, it was a 27-year-old.
Oh, okay, 27 would have been a boutique.
Yeah. I have a bottle of that actually. I love old grain.
That's the one with the Tiddlywinks label on.
Okay, I remember. Now I remember.
I was going to ask, because obviously you mentioned that you can have wheat or maize. Would you, like, if you say did a rye whiskey, would it still be grain whiskey in Scotch terms?
Yes.
Has that ever happened?
There are only 5 categories in Scotch whiskey. It's either a single malt, 100% malted barley. It's either a single grain. That's any other whiskey, any other grain distilled in any other still. So if you put malted barley, 100% malted barley for a continuous still, it becomes a single grain. So if you put a mash bill of malted rye in a pot still, and it's a single malt of rye in a pot still, it's a single grain, because single malt is 100% malted barley. So yes, it's rye technically in Scotland is a single grain. Yeah.
But then, do you think any grains other than maize or wheat have ever been used in Scotch whiskey, or seriously unlikely?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Bernard's, there's evidence of oats being used. So oats been used, and a few of these smaller distilleries and these sort of passionate geeky distilleries are exploring those sort of things. Oats it's one of those grains that it has been distilled as a grain. It's been in the mash bill of Irish pot still whiskey for a little while. So I'm looking forward to some of these small distilleries, these craft distilleries. This one man in a shed doing something.
Yeah, definitely
with oats. Yeah.
What's the sort of like ethos or like strapline of Master of Malt independent bottlings? Like, what's your sort of elevator pitch of what you're looking for? Because obviously you have the pick of any distillery you want. So how do you choose?
Choosing casks of whiskey is interesting. I mean, there's lots of distilleries out there. There's also 149 single malt distilleries in Scotland now, and plus 40 something English, and it's looking for a price. There's no point buying whiskey that no one's going to buy. Price is important. Flavour is important, and there are distilleries that disappear really, really quickly. Anything from Ardbeg, Macallan, if you get hold of a Macallan these days, disappear really quickly, very, very popular. But there are those other distilleries that people love. I mean, we can sometimes buy from major players in the industry that we're not allowed to name, so it'll be a secret, unfortunately. But it'll be a great whiskey, and most of these those unnamed ones, we're buying them from the big distilleries. We're buying fillings, and we're actually re-racking them into first fill bourbon, or we might be putting them into sherry casks to enhance that flavour, to finish it, to make it complete. Because the Scotch whisky industry, fillings is what makes the business go around. The fillings that everybody else takes and puts into other wood that they go onto their blends or their brands, or other independent bottlers like us.
Yeah. So I guess it's actually a really cool opportunity for you, because you could take a whiskey from, say, a distillery that famously only matures in sherry casks, and even though you couldn't name it, you could then mature it in something completely different and see the other side to this whiskey that no one's ever seen.
Absolutely, and there's that. That's what I mean. I'm always looking. Whenever I go to a whiskey show, the first thing I'm looking at is for independent bottlers, because they're doing something different. They'll pick out a distillery that but they'll pick out and do something slightly different with it. It'll be a different age statement. It might be younger, it might be older, but they put it into first fill bourbon, or they put it into Amontillado or something. They've done something different to it, which is what I love about independent bottlers.
Yeah, definitely. So this is like part of the new like anniversary releases for Master of Malt, like 40th anniversary. How often can we expect releases from Mom to come?
I think going forward, we've got another. I'm just looking at a load of labels at the moment, double checking everything's tickety boo on the labels, and yeah, we've got another batch of whiskies that we're putting together right now, so they'll be bottled in the very near future. For some, I think our birthday's in September. Like everybody's birthday's in September. I think Boutique's in. I think it's our 13th year this year, so that's our birthday in September the 12th.
Let's do a joint party.
Yeah, I think we should. I'm pretty certain it's end of August, September as a Master of Malton. So we have got some big numbers. This first release, the biggest number is 37, but we will have a 40-year-old for the 40th birthday. Oh, did I just say that? Jake's going to tell me that. Possibly. Yeah.
Okay, that's very exciting. Definitely keeping an eye out for that. Amazing. Well, thank you, Dave. It's really great to have you back. If you can hang around to the end, we'll reunite and chat more whiskey.
I'm going to get another lolly then.
Yes, amazing.
It's going to be Solero this time. Is it going to be another Calippo or is it something different?
Oh, yeah, I've only got those in the fridge at the moment.
They're the coldest, I feel like.
They're the coldest, yeah.
They're the coldest, yeah.
It's a great lolly. All right, Dave. Well, thank you for talking to us. We'll speak to you at the end. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for having us.
It's a great lolly. The cola flavour is the best.
Oh.
Do you not think?
It's got to be like an orange.
Ah, no.
Classic. Cola. I think cola is polarizing. I think that's a bold thing to say.
It's like my favourite flavour of things is cola flavour. I don't actually like cola, but like I love cola flavoured things. Like if I get a lollipop, which I never do, but obviously my son sometimes does. I don't go to the shop buying a lollipop. I would go for a cola flavour lollipop. If I had the choice.
To me. No? Let's get out to the poor and sippers.
Yeah,
like, is it unhinged, or am I really middle of the road with my thing?
I mean, I just think cola is such a great flavour, but I don't really drink Coke. So don't know why. But it's a good flavour. Anyway, often noted sometimes in some whiskies as well as a tasting note. Right, let's move on. This has been a good start. So there's some orange is the best, apparently, according to Dave. I don't agree at all. I even think, throwing this out there, more controversially, the lime is better than orange.
I can get behind that. Citrus, refreshing.
Yeah, citrus refreshing for sure. It's all good.
Podcast, Andy, honestly.
Yeah, Stewart really likes the lime, and there's probably a good entry point now for Stewart is going for the lime. So Stewart, welcome. What's your favourite flavour of Calippo?
Evening. I think it's going to be lime. It's a close thing to the orange. I do like lime, and I feel it probably pairs best with whiskey. And I kind of want to make a Calippo whiskey slushy.
Oh, now you're talking.
I think, I think.
Now you're talking.
I might have to buy one of those slushy machines just to make that.
Just to do this.
I'm sure my wife will absolutely love me for that.
I would love one of those right now. Absolutely. Love it.
I'll pitch it to the marketing team for the next event we do. If we do some kind of big launch event, we should have whiskey slushies.
Me and Andy will be there.
I'll be there. A few people saying as well, Pexman cola polarizing. Marmite, perhaps. Pexman does not agree with you, Jess, that cola is polarizing. It is not polarizing. Malcolm Tucker in 1987 used to like cider ice lollies. So, okay, there you go. And Ali C thinks Solero beats Calippo. I actually don't agree with that for a second. Calippo was an absolute peak ice lolly. And Maldes cola bottle sweets for orange Calippo. But in Haribo, cola's the best about the cola bottles. They're the best.
See, I like the milk bottles.
What?
Yeah.
That's outrageous. Outrageous.
I actually discovered they work quite well with whiskey. I discovered it by accident at a festival a couple of years ago. I bought a packet of milk bottles and I was munching them and drinking the whiskey and really made one of them pop. That worked pretty well.
Hey, there you go. We've had that as a test, as a pairing. Milk bottles, Haribo. So there you go. Anyway, Stewart, how are you doing? Firstly,
I'm good. How are you? It's
very
been,
well.
I've been enjoying watching everybody else. It's quite nice. Quite nice being on last. You get to see what everybody else is chatting about. It kind of sets the bar.
Yes, sets the bar. Now you've got to raise the bar.
Yeah. I'm not going to attempt that. I'll just try and maintain the bar. That's my goal.
Maintain the bar. But anyway, for those who don't know, you talk to us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the industry and found yourself at Torabhaig.
So I'm brand ambassador for Torabhaig. I've been with Torabhaig for about 3 years. In fact, just over 3 years. I started in July 22. I've been in the industry 6 years. I was a tour guide at Tomatin for 3 years before I joined Torabhaig. And prior to that, I spent 15 years figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I tried all sorts of random careers in various different industries, and eventually found my way into whiskey back in 2019. Having briefly got back into bartending, and that kind of is what really sparked my love of whiskey, and that's what made me want to get into the industry.
Awesome. And now you're brand ambassador for Torabhaig.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Torabhaig. So it's worth saying, it says first distillery on Skye for 190 years.
Yeah, 190-ish years. Talisker had Skye all to themselves for almost 200 years. Yeah. And then we turned up and crashed their party in 2017. I should say we're very good friends with Talisker. So I'm not throwing any shade at them. But it's interesting, actually, you know, when you look at other islands, and you look at the fact that Skye is one of the biggest Hebridean islands, and yet it's only very recently that we got a second distillery. Particularly when you compare to Islay, which compared to Skye is teensy, and it has, I think, about 1 million distilleries now. I think Islay is at risk of sinking under the weight of distilleries. I think it's a real illustration of the difference in geography and in climate, and just how cultivable the island is, which Skye is not. Skye is not a good place for growing barley. Very mountainous, very rocky, very little topsoil. So it's not somewhere you want to grow barley.
Okay.
Bridge helped.
Yeah, yeah. But Torabhaig's now found in the south side of the island, which is quite different to the north side, right?
Yeah. So Sleat Peninsula is where we are. So the very, very south of the island. If anybody watching has ever taken the ferry from Mallaig to Skye, then you have driven past Torabhaig either before or since it has become a distillery. Sleat is completely different from the north end of Skye. One of the things I always say to people is, if you've seen pictures of Skye, you've seen pictures of the north of Skye. That's where all the famous sites are. So the Old Man of Storr, the Kerrang, Neast Point, the fairy pools, all of that is up in the north. And most tourists arrive on Skye and then just go straight up to the north. And they miss out on Sleat, which is a real shame, because Sleat it's beautiful. And you get a very different view of the north from Sleat than you do from up in the north. So you get a really great view of the Coolins from Sleat, that you wouldn't get in the north end of the island. Sleat is known as the Garden of Skye, so quite a lot of trees in Sleat and tons of peat. So most of Sleat is covered in peat. So it's a very different part of the island than the north. Still not great for growing barley, but it's
not good for growing barley. It's just on Skye in general. It doesn't matter north, south, west, east.
Yeah, I think there's like a couple of little corners up in the north that are a little bit flatter that you could maybe grow, you know, a couple of tons of barley, but you're certainly not growing a lot of barley on Skye. And it's, as I say, it's always been pretty inaccessible. And it is the reason why Talisker was built right on the sea, because that's really the only way to get in and out of it, to get stock in and out of it, to get whiskey in, to get supplies in. So yeah, for us, having the bridge makes life an awful lot easier. And we're quite
massive as well.
It's insane. People don't realize how big it is. It's so tall.
Yeah.
And when you drive up it, you feel like you're driving like up a vertical. you can't see over the top of it. It's mad. It's
a massive bridge. Yeah, but so Torabhaig, it's almost like at the start was like a you know, Telescope and other distilleries that have lots of roots in like a historical should be of their distillery already, but Torabhaig was brand new, blank canvas.
I'm going to guess where Andrew was going with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's one of the things I find really interesting about all of the new wave distilleries, ourselves included, is that very much we all set out with somebody having this vision for the whiskey that they wanted to make. So for us, that's our whiskey maker, Neil MacLeod Matheson. So he was the one with the vision, with the idea for the kind of whiskey that he wanted to make. And there's somebody like Neil at all of these new wave distilleries, and it's one of the big differences between what new waves are doing and what old distillers are doing. It was interesting. One of the things Dave mentioned was he talked about distilleries of old being built to provide a specific style for blending, and so that was a style that was dictated by somebody else. So somebody else was like, "This is the style we need, so go and do that. Go and build one that will produce this style." But equally, there's also lots of distilleries that produce the style they have because they happen to get hold of a certain set of equipment because it was being refurbed or got rid of by another distillery. Whereas with New Wave, we all set out to create a particular style. So for us, in the early days, Neil described that as elegantly rugged, which is a somewhat abstract way of describing a whiskey. I think for him at the board meeting when he stood up and said, "I want to produce an elegantly rugged whiskey," I think he got a few blank looks. But now that we're tasting it, we understand exactly what he was getting at. So he wanted this very delicate, very light, very clean whiskey. He knew he wanted to go in heavily peated, but he wanted, as he described it, to produce something that was very well mannered. So for him at the time, it was the kind of peated whiskey he wanted to drink. Neil is not a fan of medicinal whiskies. He doesn't like creosoles. So he's not a fan of TCP and burning fishing boats and tire fires and all of those amazing flavors, which are not what we wanted to make. So for us, it's much more about ashy bonfire smoke, gunflint, fireworks. So it's all about the guayacals for us. And that's what we set out to achieve. To create this whiskey. And so Neil, knowing the whiskey he wanted to make, he worked backwards in the process. So you want this whiskey, you need this spirit. To make that spirit, you need to distill like this, you need to ferment like this, etc., etc. Took us a year to dial it in. They were changing one thing every week for a year so that they could really dial in the flavors that we wanted. And eventually, after a year, Neil was satisfied that we had reached the point, and that it was Neil. It had to be Neil because it was in his head. So he could explain elegantly rugged and delicate and light and clean. And I think everybody else, I'm sure, had an idea. I think this is probably what he's after, but nobody could know. So it had to be down to him to taste the spirit and go, yeah, that's closer, that's further away. I think there'll have been a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back with that kind of thing.
But it was super interesting as well. Sorry, I cut up earlier. Was that me who cut off? Or was it someone else? It was me.
No, it was you.
Oh, it was you, all right.
I just guessed where you were going with it.
You knew where I was going. But it was interesting because you know, like he had this idea of how he wanted the spirit to taste, but everything that's been set up in the maturation process in the distillery itself and the production process has been created. So you were talking about getting rid of those kinds of TCP notes. How's that been done within the way you mature the whiskey and the stills and where you cut points and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So we created everything to create this style, but one of the things that Neil talks about is the first day you go in and you switch everything on and you have that moment of, is it going to work? Because you come at it from, Neil came at it from experience and came at it with the experience of, so Forsyth's built our plant, came at it with their experience of, if you do X, Y, and Z, you should end up with it. So we eventually worked out we need to run long fermentations. So on average, we run around 90-hour fermentations. We run our stills really slow, so we get tons and tons of copper contact. We did lots of things really traditionally, and one of those was the fact that we converted a 200-year-old listed building into the distillery rather than just building a big shed, which would have been faster and cheaper. But we wanted to bring the building back to life. And one of the things that where we broke with tradition was shell and tube condensers. So again, lots of copper contact. So all of that gives us delicate spirit. But then, as you were getting at, the peatiness, the flavors of peat. So we wanted to concentrate the guayacols and really temper the creosoles. The guayacols predominantly are collected early on during the spirit distillation. And the creosoles predominantly are collected late during the spirit distillation. So your high alcohols, you pull through lots of guayacols. Your lower alcohols and your fusel oils, you're pulling through a lot more creosoles. So obviously, second distillation, we've got our 3 cuts, our heads, our hearts, and our tails. And where you take that heart cut, and this applies to everybody, it's going to change the flavors of your whiskey in many, many ways. So whether it's an early cut, late cut, big cut, small cut, whatever. So what we realized that was by taking an early or a high cut, we could really concentrate those guayacols and give us lots of that ashy bonfire smoke, that gunflint, that fireworks. So we run just a 15-minute foreshot, and we cut to tails at 64%. So by doing that, by taking that top end of the spirit run, we concentrate lots and lots of guayacols, and we send most of those creosoles off to our faints tank, so that we get this lovely bonfire smoke kind of flavor.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and you could absolutely taste this. Actually, Steve Coleman Williams is saying, what is more of a generic question, I suppose. What does the copper do to the taste of the whiskey? The law tradition, why not use steel or some alloy?
So copper contact. So as the alcohol vapor is in contact with copper, there's a chemical reaction that removes sulfur from it. So sulfur occurs naturally during fermentation, and so by running our stills slow, we increase copper contact. So we remove lots and lots of sulfur. So if you were to look at the inside of a still under a microscope, it would kind of look like a bit like a Brillo pad, or a bit like Velcro. So it's all little bits that this sulfur sticks to. And so by removing that, you get a much, much gentler spirit. There's distilleries that do the opposite. They run their stills hard and fast. So distilleries that have a more meaty character. So I'm thinking Craigellachie, Benrinnes, Steluen, they'll run their stills a bit harder. They want to reduce copper contact. Yeah, you could use stainless. That would massively cut down copper. Well, you would have no copper contact, obviously, because stainless has no copper. You wouldn't just cut it down; you would have none. So you would be left with lots and lots of sulfur. And for some whiskies, that's fine. That's what you want. For lots of whiskies, that's not what you want. Copper. I mean, originally, a big part of the reason for using copper is that it's malleable. It's very easy to shape it into a still. And it's one of the things I find quite fascinating about the industry is that actually it's probably within the last 30, 40 years that the science has become much better understood of what is happening inside the washbacks, inside the stills, inside the casks. So, even you look at things like mashing. So in the early illicit days, they would have taken some barley, they would have chucked some hot water into it. As that hot water went in, it gradually warmed up and it went through the different temperatures that we now intentionally do. Now, they didn't realize that's what they were doing, but by accident, that's what they did. So the copper stills would have been just the easiest thing to build, and that happened to make it lighter and better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking of stills, why do you have an adjustable roof for Torabhaig?
We have a removable roof. Our roof is our distillery is a convertible, basically. So there's a section of roof, there's a bit that sits just above our stills that can be unbolted and craned off. So we're sort of future proofing, so that when in 15 to 25 years time we have to replace our stills, we can do so fairly easily. We can take the roof off, crane out the old ones, and drop in some new ones. So we thought ahead on that one. Also, having that section being able to be open, so it's open right up into the eaves, it gave us just a little bit more height on our stills. Mm-hmm. our building is not very tall. We knew we wanted a delicate spirit. We knew we wanted lots of copper contact. That would typically dictate very tall stills, a la Glenmorangie. But our building ain't very tall, so that gave us like an extra few inches of height on the stills. Not a huge amount, but it gives us a little bit more height on the stills. But predominantly means we can crane out the old ones and drop in some new ones.
Okay, yeah, the distillery is a convertible. That's great. So talk to us about what we're trying tonight. So we had you on a while ago for the first, was it the Legacy series with the Alt Glen?
So I was on ages ago, and it was a Mossburn. So Torabhaig is by Mossburn. So we had done a Mossburn for, I can't remember if it was a pour and sip bottling or a Master of Malt. I know it's kind of one and the same, but either way, we did a Mossburn. I think one of my colleagues might have done Alt Glown.
We absolutely definitely had that on. Someone can vouch that for me.
Yeah, I think that might have been Gordon, because I vaguely remember being asked to do another one and I wasn't available. So I think that would have been Gordon, one of our sales team. So this is chapter 4 in our Legacy series. So the Legacy series is our journey to the release of a 10-year-old. And the idea of the Legacy series is that each of these is going to chart the evolution of our whiskey. So every one of them is going to be the next stage. So you're going to get to see the whiskey as it develops, as it matures, as it grows up. So we started with Alt Glown. That was the sort of first leg on the journey. Our inaugural was called 2017. That sold out like that, as you would expect with an inaugural. Alt Glown was all ex-bourbon. Then we had Crochnamonia, which brought in a bit of sherry matured. And then this one is Sound of Sleat. So named after the body of water that separates us from Skye. Not as lots of people assume the Sound of Sleat, and we're having some cheeky tongue-in-cheek comment about Sound of Sleat being silent and
that's sorry, that's originally what I thought it was when I first saw the podcast.
Most people do. They're like, oh, Sound of Sleat. Oh, there's no noise for sleet. We moved away from Gaelic names, but still managed to. We ended up with a name that has caused a little confusion. So it's the water, basically the body of water that separates Skye from the mainland. That is the Sound of Sleat. So named obviously after Slate Peninsula, where we are. This one is mostly first fill and refill bourbon. And we've brought in about 25% heavy toast virgin American oak. Kind of unusual in that it's heavy toast. So virgin American isn't obviously mega common, but you see a bit of it in Scotch. But heavy toast is way less common. And that's down to the fact that these casks came from cooperage in Spain, and they have the facility to toast, but not char. So what that means for us is a slower extraction of flavors from those casks than we would if we had gone for heavy char. Heavy char obviously would also have given us an awful lot more color, a lot faster. So this has brought, for us, this is the most delicate Torabhaig yet. It's really light, it's really easy going. Really great intro to peated whiskey. That's how we describe our whiskey often, as being a really great intro to peated whiskey. And often the peatiness throws people off, and it's quite hard to gauge it against other peaty whiskies as to what is the peatiest and pick out from a lineup which one is which between the Alt Glown and the Croch and the Sound of Sleat.
Yes, as I discovered myself, where Stewart unfairly decided to test people's noses just by looking. We didn't even know what the bottles were. We had to basically guess what the peatiest was and which one was what. It was a completely unfair test that I lost. And I actually put the peatiest whiskey that it was first. I thought it was the least peaty.
So were you guessing from sight?
From nose and taste.
All right. Okay. So
we didn't really
look at them.
Yeah, it was pretty unfair considering all the whiskies are basically the same color and
As I went through and so we did 2 stages. So there was it was 5 or 6 drams blind, and the first round was guess which is the peatiest, or put them in order of peatiest to least peaty. And then the second round was here's what they are, match the dram in front of you to the bottle.
Oh.
And as I went through and said, okay, so one of them is this, one of them is this, one of them is this, I suddenly realized that the only one that wasn't American oak was cross pneumonia. Everything else was American oak of some description. And I was like, I have unintentionally made this incredibly difficult. It was always a hard one for them to get anyway, but I unintentionally made it even harder than I intended to.
Do you know, I think we should do a pour and sip box exactly like that.
That would be amazing. I think that would be amazing.
On the tasting to try it and just guess where those whiskies sit and what they are. Or what do you think?
You could do a collab with the Thompsons, do a mystery malt pour and sip, and have the name under the wax so that people have to peel the wax off to find the name.
That's a great shout. Yeah, yeah, there you go. This is Jake's writing to the Master of Malt team right now. He's got it. This is the one, and they're all going to think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea, to be honest with you. Could be fun. What do you think, Pour and Sippers? But yeah, Jess, what's going on with the tasting notes for this one?
So much.
Yeah.
So David Wilcock on the nose, St. Clement's with smouldering driftwood on the beach with menthol mixing with the salinity.
How about that? That's a great.
I love it when we get a really evocative one.
Yeah, evocative. That's why you write, Jess, and I
don't. Mike Pizarro, instant campfire smoke on the nose. Pexman, love the name of this one. But did you know it was slate? That's the question, Pexman. Steve Colin Williams, the smoke reminds me of the windproof matches in rat packs we used to get in Afghan with a thick, sticky toffee sauce.
Who said that?
Steve Colin Williams.
Steve, you always come up with the MS just so huge. Like, it's great. It's great. I mean, that was really must be taking you somewhere that you used to be. Anyway, carry on.
Peter Gilmore, zesty taste and fudge on the palate with peat and caramel and spice. Malcolm Tucker, trying to get under the salt and smoky bacon notes, a touch of leather, orange and tobacco. Mike Pizarro, this is my favorite so far. Barry Morgan, beach fire fed by seaweed and citrus, conjuring memories of seaside camping with friends. Very nice. Peter Ray, another great example of pour and sip, showing me that I do like PT whiskey after all.
That's what you're saying, Stuart, is that thing of like, this is a good entry into, if you've never tried peated whiskey or you didn't think you like it, like a Lafroig kind of like might just throw you off further.
Yeah.
But this is one that's getting to you going, oh, actually, maybe I do like peated whiskey.
We see it so often, people will come up to us at a stand at a festival and they'll go, I don't like PT whiskey. And you go through a couple of questions, you're like, so what PT whiskey have you had? And usually the answer is Lagavulin, Lafroig and Ardbeg. And so in their mind, PT whiskey tastes like TCP. Mm-hmm. And I understand that because that's what, for a long time, that is kind of what PT whiskey tasted like. And yeah, it really surprises people when we give them Torabhaig and they suddenly go, oh, I like that. And we're like, yeah, you just don't like medicinal whiskies. Mm-hmm. So because Pete, like anything else within whiskey, there is a spectrum of flavors. So, you've got the ashy bonfire smoke at one end, you've got the medicinal stuff at the other end, and every PT whiskey exists somewhere along that line on that spectrum. I mean, it's the same as different cask finishes as well. You'll have you'll have a whiskey that has spent a couple of months in a sherry cask. It just brings in a little bit of fruitiness. On the other hand, you'll have something that spent its whole life in PX, and it's the color of Coca-Cola, and it's thick and rich and unctuous, and fundamentally it's the same thing, but it's the same but different. And so peat is the same. And yeah, that is the great thing about pour and sip, is that it gives people the opportunity to try stuff they might not have otherwise tried. Mm-hmm. There's no risk there because worst case scenario, it's 30 mils that they don't enjoy. Which so it's if all else fails, you can chuck a load of water in it and you'll be able to drink it. That's I think these kind of things are great for that.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, these will be available in the pour and sip store at discount. So get going now. Jess, what are the remainder of the tasting notes?
Where did we get to? We have Malcolm Tucker with salt and smoke, toffee undertones, smoked and sweet paprika, with peat and smoke on the finish. Real Boinga French toast with apricot jam, maple syrup and ginger, and a gingery maple syrup for the finish. I really agree with the ginger on the finish. There's something really like fiery about that. And Dave Walcock, lovely drop with a nice oily mouthfeel. He's already ordered a bottle. Peckswin goes very nicely with some dark chocolate. I can see that. Or a milk bottle. Was this the milk bottle whiskey or?
No, it was an indie bottling of a Strathmill.
Oh, really, really not the same.
Yeah, totally different. I'm random tangent here. I was hosting some guests the other day, and we had this weird conversation in the car. We were talking about soaking gummy bears in alcohol. So we decided to try it. So we got some Haribo Gold Bears and soaked it in Torabhaig bat strength.
Oh.
It wasn't good.
Yeah,
it wasn't good. Okay.
I did that when I was about 16, and it was not in whiskey because I wasn't cultured enough, but they go really slimy. Yeah. You think it's super glam. You think you're going to be like 80s, like old school, like have a gummy bear. They're just like one big gloop of nothing.
It just turned into mush. And yeah, it wasn't good. So I'll need to try it with different expressions and not just the outline bat strength. But yeah, that one did not work well.
The bat strength probably just like vaporized them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I'm glad you tried that though.
Yeah. So we tried something so you don't have to.
Yeah.
The only thing that was worse than the gummy bears was the Tangfastics. Tangfastics was even worse.
With Torabhaig?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gummy bear I managed to eat. I didn't enjoy it, but I ate it. The Tangfastic I spat out.
Oh, really? Was that bad?
It was that bad.
Okay.
It was that bad.
Okay. We went to there. Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
Where did we get to there, Jess?
I think that was all of them. And everyone loves the mystery box idea.
Yeah. Love the mystery box idea. Name them A to E, then reveal on broadcast. There you go. It could be a game changer, that one for Pour and Sip. Sure. Lastly, I want to ask you as well, because like what really struck me when I was at the distillery with you guys is just like it's just seems such a like tight knit community there working at the distillery, so kind of family orientated. Talk to us about the journeyman's drams, because it's really interesting, kind of represents that, to be honest, and
Yeah. So one of the things when we hired our distillers, we knew we wanted to hire locally, so we made a point of hiring people who already lived in the area. What we didn't want was we didn't want to hire people with experience who were going to move to Skye, take up the job, and then maybe move on fairly quickly. We wanted to create long-term jobs that benefited the community. We wanted people who were part of the community. So we hired 9 brewer distillers who already lived in the area, who knew nothing about making whiskey. The only one who had any whiskey industry experience was Iona, who at the time was our youngest distiller, and she had been a tour guide at Talisker for 6 whole weeks. So she was the only one with any whiskey industry experience. They all brought all sorts of other skills, and we trained them how to make whiskey. After a couple of years, they started asking Neil a lot more questions. They started challenging him a lot more, which, to be fair, is what he wanted. And it got to a point where he said, look, if you guys think you know so much, then maybe you should do it yourselves. So they do. So once a year, 2 of our distillers get to make their own whiskey. These are called the journeyman's drams. There are journeyman apprentices, and they pick everything that goes into it. Neil's only caveat is that it must be legal. That's it. That's the only rule. And actually, from what a couple of the first who did it, so Neil and Iona, we have 3 Neils, confusingly, at Torabhaig. We have our whiskey maker, Neil Matheson, and we have 2 distillers, Neil Nicholson and Neil Culbertson. So it's very, very confusing. So one of the distillers, Neil Culbertson, was one of the first journeymans. Talking to him, he said that they were kind of just handed a catalogue and said, there you go, off you go, figure it out. Go on the website, see what you like, see what you fancy. And so they pick everything: strain of barley, peated, unpeated, speciality malt, strain of yeast, fermentation, distillation, maturation. I mean, everything. They pick everything. And it's not a token gesture. This is a week's production. So each of them are laying down something in the region of about 80 casks. So it's no small undertaking that they're doing. And the plan is that we will release half of the stock every 5 or so years. So the first of those are due to be released next year. There is some debate which ones are going to go first. So it'll either be people who did it the first time round or the people who did it the second time round. So they will be at least 5 years old, but we could have 2 5-year-olds, we could have 2 6-year-olds, we could have a 5 and a 6. It just depends on which liquid is most ready at the time when it comes to bottle. We've had a whole host of different things. We've had lots of people doing Laureate and Concerto, so relatively common barleys. We've had one of our distillers went for Chevalier, so heritage grain. We've had every level of peating. We've had unpeated, lightly peated. We've had full peat. So one of our distillers did 140 ppm. And not content with that level of peating that he'd killed off enough fermentable sugars, he threw in 10% black malt as well. Apparently his wash looked like Guinness. We've had all sorts of different specialities. So when you look at beer brewing, you see stuff like the brown malt, crystal malt, imperial, chocolate, black. We've had, I think, pretty much every one of those at different times. Somebody has done every single one of those different roasting levels because they were looking for a particular flavor. And you actually get to see the distiller's personality coming through in them as well, because it's what they're influenced by that feeds into what they want to do. So Neil Culbertson, he wanted something that was very much influenced by the sea and very much influenced by sort of old school Scottish beer. So he went for a brown malt. He also added in some crystal malt. A lot of his liquid has been re-racked into rum casks. Again, he's thinking about that from the maritime elements. So they really get to go nuts and do what they want to do. It's pretty cool.
And it's cool because these will actually be released for us to try.
Yeah. So they'll start coming out second half of next year. We're talking about autumn at the moment. This far out, I refuse to commit to a month. So we'll say autumn is when we're talking about these coming out next year. They're probably at a distillery that's doing lots of really exciting and interesting stuff. These are the thing I'm most excited about is the Journeymans, because it's Torabhaig but different, which is super fascinating. And these guys, the fact that they get to make their own whiskey, the casks are all stored at the distillery. So if you're ever talking about pulling samples from them, often they'll follow you down. The distiller will follow you down to the warehouse so they can be there when you taste their whiskey, which is pretty cool.
That is awesome. Well, I'm conscious of time now because we still got 2 more drams to drink. Oh, well, sorry, to talk through. You don't have to drink them right now, everybody. You can drink them with us at another time. But thank you so much for talking to us, Stuart, about all things Torabhaig. That was absolutely wonderful to try that again as well. And for those who haven't tried it before, and we'll hopefully speak to you at the end.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Right. Okay. How was that?
I love that. Love that so much.
It felt that was a very popular dram with our pour and sippers there. So we're going to do the last 2 drams, very brief whistle stop tour, and then we'll get our guests back on because you don't have to drink these now. There's a lot of drams, 5 drams. We started at 50%, moved our way up. So, but Jess, what have you got for us?
So I've got a Tennessee whiskey from Leiper's Fork. So yeah, this one, it's a family-run distillery in Tennessee. It was founded, well, it's been going since 2016, reviving a sort of small batch pot distilled whiskey in like a pre-prohibition. Sorry, try saying that after 3 drams. Pre-prohibition style.
Which is the same as what Mark's doing with Stowloch.
Yes, exactly. I thought that was interesting. But what's interesting about this one as well is that it uses sweet mash. So you may have heard of sour mash. It's on a lot of American whiskies. And so with sour mash, there's no legal definition actually, but around 20 to 30% of the water that is used to make the mash is recycled stillage from the previous distillation. So you've got this like hot liquid going in and like kickstarting the next batch of whiskey. So that's sour mash. However, Leiper is made with sweet mash, which is much less common, which basically is like a whole new batch each time. You get none of the stillage. And basically it's better for small distilleries because you don't have to keep the whole thing continuously running, but also it has a sort of, it's about the pH. So essentially when you have a sweet mash, it's a slightly higher pH, which apparently when you bottle at a higher strength, like this one, which is bottled in bond at 50%, it makes it sort of smoother and easier to drink at that higher percentage. So there's lots of cool stuff about this one. So being bottled in bond means it has to be bottled by a single distiller in a single season, either spring or fall, so in one half of the year, aged for 4 years and bottled at 50% or 100 proof.
Sounds better.
Yeah.
Sounds better than it.
It makes sense if you want bottled in bond for a Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah.
And also this is a Tennessee whiskey and not a bourbon because it is filtered through maple charcoal. So a few like very cool things that make this one different. But you've got all those lovely notes of like milk chocolate, dark berries, stone fruits, and like maple syrup sweetness. So I think it's got all, if you like a sweeter bourbon style, I mean, even if you don't, we've learned that people are going to try something new and find something they love. So yeah, definitely give this one a sip. You don't have to do it now. Yeah, very cool stuff.
Lovely. That sounds right on my street, that one, to be honest with you. And the last is the Glenfarclas 15, the Cheltenham Festival edition. So we have had Glenfarclas 15 before. I'm pretty convinced. On pour and sip. I'm pretty convinced we have. But regardless, I like Glenfarclas a lot because it still just feels, it's like a whiskey lover's drink. It's totally independent still, family-run distillery. It was purchased, it was found back in 1836 and purchased by the Grant family for £511 and 19 shillings in 1865, and still to this day is family-run and completely independent. I think that's why a lot of people like Glenfarclas. And what I used to find about Glenfarclas, which was great about it, was it felt like you could try good ages of single malts at like kind of a good price. And that's why I always loved about Glenfarclas. You could get like a 21-year-old for just, it wasn't that much, and it still isn't comparatively to what you might pay for other 21-year-old single malts. And it's really, really good. They're noted for using sherry casks, and they still use lots of old-fashioned production techniques like open direct fire stilling and slow maturing sherry drams. It's situated in Speyside, though, like Macallan, they call it Highland Distillery. And this is a new bottling, kind of celebrating the 15 years of the distillery, sponsoring the Cheltenham Festival, which is the cross-country steeplechase. So for those of you like Glenfarclas, like me, I think this will be a good one to try, and I will be trying that. I expect all those usual Glenfarclas tasting notes with that kind of toffee, kind of wonderful sherried fruits and stuff like that. And if anyone does know about a 1987 bottling of the family casks of the Glenfarclas, let me know, because I've been looking for a while. So yeah, that's about that. I think Malcolm Tucker was saying that it was the first distillery visited in 1979. So exactly, and it's probably quite similar or exactly the same now. And I should mention that, yeah, I think we did have the 15 on, if anyone can work that one out for me. But I will invite all our guests back on. I can see Dave Worthington right there. Ice cream has been finished. Nice lolly has been finished. Stewart is back. Long time no see, Stewart. It's been a while. And Mark, who,
hello.
It was a long time ago since
I've been enjoying some stuff since I was on the screen.
What are you holding there?
When you started, Mark.
Yeah, is that Stowloch?
Wee bit of Stowloch.
Yeah, okay, wee bit of Stowloch, and yeah, that bottle was full when Dave started talking, and now we're a few drams in. So thank you all. Usually I ask everybody a question, which kind of guests are talking about. Actually, someone here has asked a question for all the guests at the end. Well, firstly, Jess, ask everybody. They should let us know the first, the most important question.
The most important question for all of our pour and sippers, which I think is going to be a tough one tonight, is which was your favourite whiskey? Yeah, don't hold back. No one's going to be offended.
Yeah.
Honest thoughts.
Yeah.
While we chat about Malcolm Tucker's question to the group.
Yeah, Malcolm Tucker's asked a question for the guests at the end. What whiskey would you buy a friend for their 60th birthday party? So it's clearly Malcolm Tucker's friend's 60th birthday party. Dave, you're at the top there, so we'll start with you.
Right. Our 60th birthday party. Wow.
Yeah.
A whiskey.
Yeah.
Something old. Cracky. Yeah. Trying to find anything in my birth year is. I remember coming across a very old Glenfarclas, and I'd almost pulled the trigger on it, and I thought, no, I don't want to do that. And I wish I had, because it's thousands of dollars now.
Yeah.
But
what
yeah.
1982?
Sorry?
1984 was that? 1985?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think my eldest daughter's 84.
Yeah.
84, yeah. So, yeah, it's a little bit older than that. Oh, yeah, something like, family cask out of Farkas would be good. They're expensive these days, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, yeah, family cask. Stuart, you got a recommendation there?
I think I'm probably going to go with my previous employer, something old from Tomatin, the 30-year-old or the 36. Really tasty drams, and not silly money either for something with some real age. So yeah, I'd go with one of those, and probably work for lots of people as well.
Good shout, that is. Tomatin's a good distillery.
Yeah, really good liquid.
And yourself, Mark?
Well, I mean, aside from ours, of course. I mean, I probably have to go back to my roots. When I started drinking whiskey, it was Scotch. So I think an older Macallan, 25-year-old Macallan, 18-year-old Macallan is in my sweet spot. And then if you want something a little bit more less cost prohibitive, a Balvenie, probably the Caribbean cask.
Okay.
One of my favorites from Balvenie.
Yeah, that's the dram.
Now, I understand there are some Balvenies in the UK that are not in the US.
Okay.
So I'd be very interested in those.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Portwood is a good 21-year-old Portwood. That's a great dram.
Oh, that's a great dram as well.
Yeah. That's a great.
That is a great dram. I'm just going to ask one more question, because this is my new thing. If you could share a glass of whiskey with someone, dead or alive, who would it be? Could be anyone. Dave, go.
Oh, I would like to do it with my dad.
There you go. Oh, that's sweet. That is very
I lost my dad a few years ago, and I hadn't seen him for years because he emigrated to the Far East. So I hadn't seen him for quite a few years. So yeah, it'd have been good to sit down and share a dram, because he just watched my career grow.
Yeah, that's sweet. We had a very similar comment from someone last week as well. It is amazing how whiskey can do that as well, when you want to share them with like kind of lost ones and loved ones that have been lost. So it's kind of a great thing, whiskey, for that as well. Stuart, yourself?
I think I'm going to go famous. I think I'm going to go. I reckon Anthony Hopkins would be an interesting one to have a dram with.
Yeah.
I reckon he has some pretty great stories.
Yeah.
I think he'd be a good laugh.
Yeah, no, I could get that as well. What about you, Mark?
Well, I don't know if she drank whiskey, but I think the most intriguing individual that I've read about and I've watched from a distance was Queen Elizabeth II.
Okay.
I think her stories would be phenomenal. So, but she's not available. Probably go with William.
Prince William.
Yeah, highly respected him for a lot of years.
He likes whiskey.
Plus, I hear he does karaoke. So,
so after a few Stowloch, you could be singing karaoke with Prince William.
Yes, that's bucket list for me.
I really wonder what he'd sing, what his choice of karaoke tune would be.
I can see him belting out "Sweet Caroline."
Sweet Caroline, yeah. That's exactly it. Jess, do you want to talk about what everyone's voting
Yeah,
for.
the votes are in.
Votes are in. They've
like
been
I'm on like
counted
or something. Who have we got? We got Paxman really liking the Leiper's fork. Maldes also liking the.
Well, hold on. Where's Paxman? No. Oh no, you're right. Sorry, he's voted twice. I was further down.
Oh, apologies. So I start too early.
I've spoiled that. I think he changes his mind later on.
Vote early, vote often.
Yes.
Okay, we've got Real Boinga, Torabhaig, number 1. Ali C. Tonight, Torabhaig, but genuinely, they were all a totally different style and all excellent. Very diplomatic from Ali. Thank you. Chris, Stowloch is the winner by a whisker. Peter Ray, Torabhaig, lovely stuff. Nick Tarrant, Ozark for me, stunning. Pexman, Torabhaig. But going to buy the Leiper's fork. As always, excellent selection and wonderful guests. Steve Con Williams, I'm not sure I can believe I'm saying this. The Stowloch was the winner. First time an American whiskey has won for him. Mike Pizarro, the Glenfarclas. But I think the 39-year-old just pips the best whiskey tonight. But the Torabhaig is the best by value. Graham Scott, Torabhaig by a whisker. Malcolm Tucker, gone for the Ozark Stowloch. David Wilcock, Great Drams, and Torabhaig as to my personal taste.
There you go. I'd say that's a pretty even mix there. This is a kind of
drink what you like with the people you like.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's a great way. As obviously we always say, whiskey is very subjective and you can't pick, but it is good fun to see what you guys all like. But also that was very succinctly put there, Mark, and a lovely way to end tonight's tasting. So we will see you next month, I'm sure, for another pour and sip extravaganza. So cheers to everybody for tuning in as per usual. Last votes here coming, Maldes, the Ozark and the Leiper's fork were both the top for me. The Torabhaig was lovely too. There you go. So thank you everybody. Thank you to all our guests. You've all been amazing tonight. It's great chatting to you all. Thank you, Jess, again, my wonderful co-host. And I'm going to sit in front of a fan for the next few minutes or something because I am sweating. Okay.
I'm off to get a Calippo. I don't know about you.
A Calippo, yeah. I've got Calippos in the fridge. Unfortunately, I have no cola ones, but that's the shame. But anyway, we will see you all soon. If you liked any of the whiskies, go and get them from the Pour and Sip store. And thank you for tuning in. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You.
Bye.